There are nearly 8 billion of us now. Cities blaze with electric light from Sao Paulo to Seoul. Data pulses through invisible airwaves, and rockets claw free from orbit to touch the stars. But it wasn't always this way. 24 hours, 10,000 sunrises ago, the human story balanced on a knife's edge. Just 4,600 years back, Earth held only about 28 million of us. That's half the population of present-day California, spread across jagged deserts, trembling forests, and riddles of stone. No machines, no metal tools, just hands, rope, sweat, and vision. And yet, somehow, in the blistering heart of Egypt, humans lifted 2.5 million blocks of limestone into a pile taller than any building on Earth for thousands of years. Why? How? And what did it cost them? If you're using these to fall asleep, that's literally why I make them. So, subscribe maybe, and tell me where you are and what time. I check comments, and it's always New York at breakfast, Cairo at bedtime, Perth somewhere in between. All at once, the same story reaching everywhere. The sun rises differently in ancient Egypt, not with the hurried blink of city skylines, but with the slow breath of a world still half asleep. Along the Nile, the lifeblood of a harsh and watchful land, mist coils low above papyrus reeds and crocodile backs. Small clusters of reed huts cling to higher ground, guarded by the gaze of jackals and gods. It is 2600 BCE, and for the people who live here, life means ritual, obedience, and grit carved into bone. Every morning, the river whispers change, but the land doesn't forget. Above them, the vision of their pharaoh, a god cloaked in flesh and gold, pierces the heavens. His command is clear. The dead must rise into immortality, and so stone must fly. And men, hundreds of them, perhaps tens of thousands, will obey. Because to disobey is to be swallowed not only by the sand, but by oblivion. They wake before the Sunday. Each man, calloused and coughing from weeks of desert grit, gathers in silence. No horns, no overseers yelling, just the discipline of routine embedded into muscle and marrow. The Nile has crested just days ago, leaving behind fertile black mud and renewed gods to thank. In the shadow of what would someday be called the Great Pyramid, men form lines beneath towering scaffolds of cedar and imported sycamore. Ramps of limestone dust spiral like coiled serpents around the growing tomb. They will drag 40-ton stones today, some with sleds slicked by water and animal fat, some with bare will. And when one man falls, whether crushed or vanished into the sunstroke, the line moves forward. No pause, no prayer, because the tomb must rise. The soul of the pharaoh depends on it. And when a god demands a staircase to eternity, flesh becomes its scaffolding. But not all stones were equal. Deep within the eastern quarries at Tura and the rugged granite veins of Aswan, chosen men carved the skin of kings from the earth itself. They left behind echoes in the form of tool marks and finger-width chisel strokes, still visible today. These men were not slaves. They were specialists, craftsmen, the bearers of forgotten calculations and inherited muscle memory. Some struck stone until their fingertips bled, until their shadows faded into dusk and returned before dawn. Ox-drawn sleds pulled the polished limestone across miles of sand, their runners groaning with the weight of eternity. At each bend in the river, more rituals, incense, chants, offerings of bread and beer warded off spirits older than gods, because to carve a tomb for the divine was to bargain with death itself. Every block was not just stone, it was an oath, a sacrifice, a tether holding the mortal world to the divine, so the pharaoh could climb it like rungs to the stars. Not all journeys ended at the plateau of Giza. Some began in darkness, in caves where lunar calendars were scratched into walls with bone. Others in boatyards along the Nile Delta, where cedar wood from Levantine traders waited to become ceremonial barges, carved with lotus and lion. Transportation itself was a sacred undertaking. Men coordinated the flooding of oxen-thudded trails with calculated releases of canal water, every degree of incline measured by eye, every rope triple wound, and tested against the groan of weight that could shatter femurs on failure. As the stones neared their final resting place, a silence fell over the workers, not from exhaustion but reverence, for they were entering the realm of alignment. Every block placed was an argument with time, a whisper to the stars, lasering the structure's core toward Orion's belt, toward a sky that refused to be tamed. And as the massive slabs clicked into final position, one after another, they did so not merely under the force of men, but under the weight of belief transcending death. For what these builders forged was not a tomb, but a portal, a machine for eternity made of dust and will. Yet beneath the grandeur, something trembled. Reports unearthed in glyphs and jar fragments hint at years when Nile floods failed, when harvests waned and bones grew sharper under skin, bodies buried with hands clenched, stomachs deflated from hunger, suggest that even as the pyramids rose, the people cracked at the edges. Droughts came not with thunder, but silence, and with silence, fear. Was the pharaoh weakening? Had the gods turned? The workers, though revered, were still human. Wives mourned sons who never returned from quarry runs. Children cried louder on nights when the sky burned red, imagining fire serpents above. The grand design, held upright by faith and routine, began to absorb a darker truth that the cost of eternity might be the unraveling of the present. And still, stone by stone, they built, with cracked lips, broken nails, and stories locked behind their teeth. Nothing recorded their names, but every grain of dust on that plateau remembers them. As years passed, a new kind of silence settled over Giza, not the silence of reverence, but of forgetting. The roaring chant of workers bent beneath sky, and load faded into wind. Sand swallowed scaffolding, tools oxidized to memory. But beneath the pyramid, in chambers hidden like a heartbeat, something endured. The king's chamber, its granite ceiling slabs weighing more than diesel trains, still resounds faintly, as if tuned to a frequency only the dead can hear. And around it, shafts cut with maddening precision aim toward stars now shifted. Whatever magic they served, their meaning has yet to be fully understood. In every direction, the story breaks off. Was it resonance? A tomb's breath? A cosmic antenna? We don't know. The deeper the camera zooms into these stone veins, the more the picture fractures. The closer we come, the farther they retreat. And maybe that's the point. The pyramids are not explanations. They are questions. Questions sealed against time, against sand, against forgetting. Testaments to a species that, with no machines and no assurances, looked up and dared to build that gaze into stone. And yet, even across 4.5 millennia, the hands that laid those stones still grip us, not with force, but with quiet insistence. They call through equations we've barely decoded, through stone arrangements that mimic something older than civilization itself. We stare at their work, half in arrogance, half in awe, and something stares back. Something nameless, buried not just under sand, but under time itself. Because the pyramid isn't only a monument, it's a mirror, a reminder that survival was never about comfort. It was about translation, turning pain into purpose, labor into meaning, dust into something that would outlive breath. That buried under calculations and rituals was a raw, trembling truth. They feared being forgotten, and so they built louder than time could whisper. We remember them not by names, but by silhouette, horizon, and shadow. And as the last wind-swept grains settle in Giza each night, the question remains what, in all our steel and satellites, will last even half as long. Tonight, somewhere between breathing towers and glowing screens, someone lies awake listening. Maybe in Mumbai, where the city hums like a living circuit. Maybe in Reykjavik, where the moon gleams off ancient basalt and the ocean slaps stone like a metronome. Or maybe far from cities altogether, where stars spill unfiltered and the stillness echoes older songs. And as eyelids grow heavy, a story from 4,600 years ago slips between heartbeats, a story not just of stones and pharaohs, but of every anonymous soul who moved the impossible with bare hands, not to be remembered by name, but by lineage of wonder. Their legacy is not only in what they built, but in allowing us to ask how, to pause, to lean closer, to feel the thrum of humanity in the spaces between blocks of limestone, in the shadows between stars. So if this finds you at bedtime in Istanbul, at daybreak in Buenos Aires, or in the middle of nowhere with only rustling leaves for company, just know this: the ancient world is never far. It waits beneath our feet, above our heads, and deep inside the stories we carry. Sleep well. We begin again tomorrow. Somewhere deep below modern Cairo, under layers of steel rebar and neon-lit billboards, the ancient foundation stones still lie undisturbed. They do not care for satellites or algorithms. They remember a time when knowledge was not typed, but etched with sharpened copper and sealed in smoke. When alignment with the stars was survival, not superstition. Beneath the flicker of passing headlights, that memory breathes. A long inhale across time, a tapestry of touch, rhythm, sacrifice, and belief. And as cities rise and fall, as languages evolve and empires turn to dust, the pyramids remain not as relics, but as sentinels, silent, enduring, and very much alive. Their purpose perhaps lost, but their presence louder than ever. In stone, early humanity whispered a challenge across millennia. Remember us, not just for what we built, but for daring to build at all. Let that be the last thought tonight. Sleep, knowing you too are part of that same arc, fragile, trembling, and reaching upward, toward the impossible, toward the stars. Generations passed, and the story of those calloused hands became myth, their struggles diluted into gods and glyphs. But some truths survive in muscle and blood, in the way modern builders instinctively brace under weight, in the rhythm of hammers echoing back to a rhythm older than language. There, in that ancient beat, the pyramid speaks, not in words, but in weight, in silence, in alignment. As modern eyes scan satellite images and laser-mapped tombs, new questions surface from old stone. Did they know something we don't? Were the angles and shadows meant to mirror not just stars, but something deeper? An order, a code, a waiting message carved so deeply the earth itself must carry it. In the end, it may not matter. What does matter is that they built, and we remember. So as sleep edges near, let it take hold not in forgetfulness, but in wonder. Wonder for a time when vision outweighed tools, when belief became architecture, when no one asked if they should only how. Sleep well, explorer, chronicler, descendant. The journey continues with every question we dare to ask, even in dreams. Back then, history wasn't chronicled in books or bytes. It lived in patterns of migration, in burial sites lined with obsidian arrowheads, in teeth worn down by raw barley and grit. And just as the stones of Giza told a story of vision built into permanence across distant lands, other traces whispered from the soil. In Nubia, dwellings arranged with celestial precision faced sacred rises. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats clawed at heaven with bricks marked by thumb and reed. And in the Indus Valley, cities flowed like rivers themselves, grid planned with uncanny foresight. It was not just Egypt. Humanity was awakening everywhere separately, yet together responding to something shared and unseen. a pulse beneath civilization, a drive not just to survive, but to shape the world with intention, to etch order onto the chaos. These early architectures weren't just shelters, they were statements. Proof that even at the edge of knowledge, the unknown did not silence us, it beckoned. And in that beckoning, in that reach, we became the builders of more than walls and tombs. We became tellers of time. And still, we dig. Not just into sand and sediment, but into meaning. With every excavation, every drone flyover or underground scan, the story deepens not toward a conclusion, but toward a more intricate question. The work of those ancient builders is not static. It evolves with us. It changes tints as we change perspectives. Every newly found corridor, every hieroglyph half decoded, reminds us that beneath the pyramid's finality lies motion, intellectual, spiritual, generational. They are not just structures, they are dialogues. Ongoing, urgent, waiting to be continued. Somewhere in the echo of wind brushing along the Giza necropolis, the murmurs return. Build, reach, remember. The night may fall, the tools refined, the language abstracted, but the impulse remains. That same ache in the bones that once lifted gods from gravel now stirs behind our screens and satellite feeds, whispering, "What will you leave behind?" And maybe, just maybe, the answer doesn't lie in stone at all, but in the stories we dare to keep alive. And yet, even as these questions stretch across time, they remain strangely personal. In the echoing corridors of museums, in classrooms lit by pale projectors, in quiet headphones playing late-night documentaries, something ancient still stirs. It hums beneath our modern routines, the turning of keys, the flick of switches, the pressing of soles against subway floors. The ancients cannot speak to us, but their silence instructs. Their choices of alignment, of sacrifice, of scale pose wordless riddles that time refuses to erase. We walk further into a future shaped by touchscreens and tethered satellites, but their shadows walk with us, reminding us that awe is inherited, that doubt is ancient, that the hunger to mark our places, to say we were here in something other than fleeting breath, is not new. It is old as dust and firm as bedrock. So, close your eyes tonight, not to escape the world, but to re-enter it on the layer that still listens. Somewhere, in the pause between your breath and the next, the stones remember. And in that remembering, we are made whole. At the core of it all, beneath the weight of limestone dreams and rituals stitched to starlight, remains a singular truth. We have always been trying to make sense of impermanence, to answer time with structure, to swallow fear with legacy. The pyramids, vast and unmoving, are not only architecture but responses to a question our species still hasn't figured out how to ask properly. What does it mean to be temporary in a world that forgets? And how can we, fragile flashes of breath and will, mark the infinite in the language of the material? As sleep draws close and the hours dissolve into hush and hum, let this story linger. Let it press gently upon the edge of dreams, not to explain, not to solve, but to remind that long before the internet, before satellites, before skyscrapers, we reached backward and upward at the same time, hands in the dust, eyes in the stars, just trying, wordlessly, to be remembered. So tonight, as the digital lights of 1,000,000 cities blink across satellite maps, remember this: beneath those pixels lie layers of soil, and under that soil, stories. Some silent, some sacred, all waiting. From Cairo's paved arteries to the buried echoes of Thebes, from the Indus mud-brick streets to the shadowed altars of Mesoamerica, a single pulse beats through time: build, align, connect. It is the inheritance of memory, not through names, but through effort. We are all, in some way, pyramid builders, architects, not just of cities or software, but of legacy. And maybe the real monument is not in the shape of stone, but in the decision to reach beyond the now, to say, with everything we are, that we were here and we tried to matter. Sleep now, not to forget, but to listen. For in the quiet between, in the heart of stillness, that ancient whisper still lingers. Build what outlives you, but let it carry your truth. And as the stars above Giza turn once more, unseen by those who once shaped the angles and sealed the corridors, one truth remains illuminated by moonlight and memory. The pyramids were not only monuments to a man, but to a moment when belief, ingenuity, and mortal struggle aligned perfectly across stone and sky. They remind us that greatness does not emerge from ease, but from tension, from demand, from vision that refuses to shrink before impossibility. These builders, anonymous yet eternal, felt time pressing hard upon their backs and responded not with fear, but with shape, with ritual, with rhythm, with resolve carved so deeply into creation that even millennia cannot erode its pulse. And so we lie here now, wrapped in the quiet rustle of sheets and the hum of our own ambitions, haunted in the gentlest way. Because beneath our modern noise is a call older than civilization. To build against the dark, to believe against the silence, to endure. Rest now, not just in body, but in wonder, knowing that even as you sleep, the stones remember, and they are still listening. In the distance, the midnight sands sigh beneath the rotation of stars, and winds pass over Giza like a choir singing in a language lost to all but time. The pyramids, lit faintly by moonlight, do not sleep. They loom, watchful, an architecture of longing, still humming with the breath of those who once dared to shape the eternal. And as the final thoughts of the day dissolve into shadow, one might feel it, that low, ancient thrum, not in the ears, but in the marrow. A resonance that says, the story is not over. It never was. Somewhere, even now, a hand draws plans by firelight, a vision stirs in silence, and the next monument, be it of stone or spirit, waits to be born. So sleep now, under the gaze of stars that watch the first stones fall into place, and dream not of what is, but of what may yet rise. When dawn comes, the building begins again. And when that first beam of sunlight slices across the limestone, painting golden tattoos on the pyramid's flanks, it doesn't just mark the dawn, it marks continuity, a silent pact between then and now. For even ruined stones have memory, even shadows remember form, and though we may never know every hand that labored or every prayer whispered into mortar, their story is no less ours. Because each time we look up and wonder, each time we trace alignment or sketch significance in sand, we are picking up the thread. We are answering the same call, to leave behind something solid in a world that drifts. So let this be the lullaby tonight, not of endings, but of the circle, a quiet cycle of reaching and return, of effort and awe. The pyramids remain, and so does the question, what will remain after us? Sleep in that thought, in its weight, in its promise. Long after the last torch dimmed in Giza, and the chants faded into the hush of sand, the legacy continued not in the monuments alone, but in the endless hunger to understand, to push beyond what is visible, because somewhere, between the imagined hammers of the builders and the imagined breath of the stars, humanity birthed its greatest inheritance, curiosity. It loops through time like a winding ramp, leading us forward, urging us backward, reminding us with every echoed footfall that the question is sacred. Maybe this is what they truly built, a place to wonder. And as modern minds drift into sleep, held in the soft cocoon of comfort won through millennia, there is still a tremble in the dark, a whisper. Listen closely. Time does not bury meaning, only hides it for the waking moments brave enough to look. Rest now, in the hush that knows no era, the breath between centuries. And when your eyes open once more, remember you, too, are a builder of understanding, of memory, of tomorrow. So in the quiet that follows, know this. The ancient world never truly vanished. It lives under glass in climate-controlled vaults, yes, but also in gestures, in instincts, in every human hand that shapes with care, and every mind that asks without fear. The pyramid is less a thing and more a continuity, a line that arcs from burial to launch pad, from chisel mark to touchscreen. Every stone once hauled toward the sky echoes in the launch countdowns, the architectural blueprints, the breathless reaching we still do, because to build is to hope. And hope, in all its forms, is archaeology in reverse, the act of leaving behind something intentional, something that might someday be found and understood. So wherever this finds you, on a train, in a room aglow with city light, on a starlit porch, far from signal, slip into sleep, not as escape, but as ritual, the same kind the ancients knew, not a silence, but a setting down, a deeper listening. For tomorrow, dust will rise again. And in it, your footprints, small but certain, will write the next line of an unbroken story, one dreamed in stone. So let the final line be this: beneath every act of building, every ritual etched in ash or fired clay, there thrums a truth more ancient than the pyramids themselves, that we, brief and breathing, need to belong, that somewhere between sand and starlight, we ache to be seen, to endure, to matter. What those early humans created was not just a marvel seen from space, it was a heartbeat set in rock, pulsing calmly against the whirl of unknowable centuries. As sleep wraps the present in stillness, imagine this: a boy in 2600 BCE presses his palm to a half-carved block, feeling the chill of dawn and the weight of purpose. Now a girl in 2025 presses fingers to glass, scrolling through pictures of the same block, wondering how it was lifted. Between the two, no break, only a quiet bridge of wonder. So sleep, yes, but sleep deeper than rest. Sleep as those builders once prayed, eyes closed, spirit open, grounded by dust, lifted by possibility. The stones are watching, and tomorrow, like yesterday, waits to be shaped. And as the night folds in tighter, the ancient rhythm slows, but never stops. Somewhere, another mind settles into slumber, the echoes of limestone and constellations nudging imagination beyond what is known. This is not just sleep, it's initiation, the act of stepping silently into a lineage older than empire, older than writing, older even than time measured by stars. A lineage of seeking, of hoping, of marking the impermanent with the indelible. So let the silence now take this torch and carry it across dreams, across oceans, across eras yet unnamed. And when morning arrives, whether through Cairo's clustered alleys or Montana's vast horizon, wake not as a bystander, but as a keeper, a steward of memory, a whisperer of monuments. For in every stirring moment of awe, in every breath pause to wonder, the pyramids rise again, not just in Giza, but in us, still building, still reaching, still remembering. Even now, with all we've built and all we've decoded, the pyramids stay just ahead of understanding, like a horizon we can approach but never touch. That is their final brilliance. Not the grandeur, not the symmetry, nor even the engineering, but the invitation to wonder, to reach, to lay one more word upon the stack of meaning rising through time. As this final breath of the night exhales, think not of endings, but of continuation, of questions waiting beneath the dust, of hands once blistered by stone, now echoed in hands tapping stories into glass. A sacred relay stretching across millennia, from the firelit quarries to the phosphorescent glow of screens. In each retelling, the builders live again not as ghosts, but as guides. And as darkness settles and dreams begin, Let this truth anchor you. The pyramids echo because we still listen. And so long as we listen, they endure. Sleep now soft, safe, remembered. The stone is never silent. And the story, impossibly, is still unfolding. Somewhere, unseen beneath telescopes and the glare of city skylines, there lies a resonance deeper than science and older than law. The echo of creation without blueprint, of wonder born not from data, but from devotion. The pyramids are a monument, yes, but they are also a question flung into eternity and caught by each generation that dares to ask not merely how, but why. They remain because we need them to remain. Because in them, we locate our origins not just as builders or believers, but as beings who cannot help but shape meaning from dust. And in every silent stretch of stone, in every aligned shadow, in every block placed with trembling purpose, they carry the hush of a story still unfolding, one not finished by time, but retold by it. So sleep now, wrapped in the continuity of those whispers, temples of the possible cast in stars and stone. For the story is not over, nor will it ever be. As long as eyes search skies and hands reach forward, the question will remain. And so will the pyramids. Even as centuries cloak the desert with silence, the pyramids hold fast not just against erosion and empire, but against forgetting itself. Their edges may soften beneath wind and time, but their message sharpens. A monument doesn't endure by stone alone, but by resonance. An echo must find ears and hearts. And so, the final lesson tucked into every angle, every faultless slope, is not just endurance, but invitation. To live deliberately. To leave behind more than footprint or digital trace, but an imprint of soul. Sleep now, in awe and in peace, knowing the story loops onward. From quarry to cradle, from sand to screen, the same whisper continues. Shape the world while you are here. And in that shaping, be remembered. By feeling, by wonder, by the timeless reach towards something greater than self. That is what the pyramids taught, and that is why they endure. Maybe that's the real marvel, that these structures, built without engines or algorithms, are still working, still transmitting, not energy, not sound waves, but something harder to define, a signal of human intent, a beacon that whispers not just of gods and kings, but of ordinary hands lifting dreams into permanence. They stand not simply for what was accomplished, but for what was risked to accomplish it. And in them we see both the height of ambition and the depth of mystery. So if this is the final moment before sleep curls around thought, let it carry you softly on wind shaped by time, across dunes woven with memory, under constellations that no longer align but somehow still point home. Let the pyramids speak their last word tonight. Not tower, not tomb, not triumph, but testament. Testament that we were here, that we endured, that even now, across millennia and silence, the story continues block by block, breath by breath. And so as this story dims gently into the folds of sleep, there is one last truth to cradle close. When early humans built the pyramids, they weren't just solving problems of weight or stone, they were confronting time itself. Every cut, haul, and placement was a declaration. We were here, and we mattered. Against famine, against fear, against the vast silence of a starlit sky, they answered with endurance. And today, as our own monuments rise of glass, of code, of orbiting satellites, we carry that same note in our bones. The ache to be seen, the will to remember, the quiet rebellion against oblivion. So drift now into dreams shaped by ancient hands and modern wonder. For in that space where time folds and myths breathe, the work continues. And the question lingers, not just what will we leave behind, but will it speak as loudly, as clearly, as endlessly as stone once did? Sleep in that echo. It is yours. Let this be where the story fades, not in silence, but like twilight folding gently into the skin of the world. Because the pyramids were never just an ending, they were always a beginning carved by calloused palms and minds that dared to map the heavens with stone. And if tonight is the final breath of this telling, let it carry not closure, but cadence, a rhythm echoing with questions older than logic, older than sleep. They asked, without asking, what will outlive us? And answered in limestone and starlight. So close your eyes now, not to shut the world out, but to feel it from beneath the tremor of ancient ambition, the hush of countless dreams etched into dust. You are not apart from this story. You are made of it. And as the last traces of wakefulness flicker, and the desert wind hushes just outside the reach of time, remember, the monuments remain because we choose to remember. And what you carry forward into morning, into wonder, into your own unshaped legacy, may just become the next line of stone. Sleep now, the story holds you. From dust to dusk, from hands to heavens, the journey comes full circle. The pyramids, steadfast among shifting sands and blinking satellites, are more than memory, they are an inheritance. Passed quietly from cradle to question, they remind us that there is grace in reaching beyond what we can hold. That the truest monuments are not just built but believed in. So allow the calm to settle now, like the last grain of sand drifting back onto stone, unhurried and eternal. Let the echo of those ancient builders wrap around thought, cradle it, lull it into sleep. Because even if time forgets names, it never forgets purpose. The pyramids endure not as history, but as invitation to wonder, to build, to dream, in ways that the wind may one day whisper across eons. Sleep now, as the sky turns gently overhead, and know this. You are part of a story that began before language, and yet somehow it's still being written. In awe, in effort, in stone. And tomorrow, as sunlight spills once more across the desert's vast hush, the first footprints will press into sand just as they did thousands of years ago. Not those of pharaohs or scribes, but of the curious, the dreamers, the ones who listen between heartbeats for the voice of stone. For every age builds not always with chisels or cranes, but with vision, and though the forms may change, the instinct remains. To lift meaning skyward, to plant permanence in a world of fading echoes. So keep the story close, even as sleep pulls you deeper. Let each breath be a soft hammerfall on time's great scaffold. And when you rise, know this: the world does not need monuments to be reminded of greatness. It only needs reminders that someone once dared to build, and that someone still does, even now, perhaps especially now. So let this be the resting place of the tale, not an end, but a breath held across centuries. Among forgotten syllables and celestial alignments, the pyramids persist not as puzzles to be solved, but as memories etched in matter. Their central promise, whispered beneath layers of sand and speculation, is neither dominion nor death. It is presence, enduring, undeniable. And as your own breath slows beneath weighted blanket or night sky, the echo of that truth bellows gently onward. We are not distant from the ancient. We are the continuation of its question. In our algorithms, in our architectures, in every quiet attempt to make beauty from dust, we echo them. So now, let sleep carry you like the Nile bore stone slow, with quiet ceremony, knowing that the same spirit that lifted kings toward constellations stirs still behind your ribs. This is not just a bedtime story. It is a ritual of remembering, a lullaby carved in light and legacy. Sleep then, wrapped in the soft hush of all that survives, and know the stones are still speaking, and you, even in stillness, are still listening. So as the last grains fall through this ancient hourglass of story, let the final image linger, not of kings or gods or towering monuments, but of hands ordinary, weathered, unnamed, shaping history, one stone at a time. These are the hands that held the sky in place without knowing they'd be remembered. And yet they are. Not for wealth, not for conquest, but because they built with belief. That belief remains, humming in every question we still ask, every blueprint we still draw, every dream we still dare to lift beyond the reach of fear. The sands of Giza are quiet now, but they are never silent. They breathe with legacy. They murmur with the labor of those who came before and the hope of those who follow. So sleep now, in the steady hush of forever, and when the world shifts once more, may you rise with the knowing that to build is to become timeless. And you, like them, were never forgotten, only waiting to be remembered. And so, the night breathes its last questions into silence. Somewhere beyond clocks and calendars, beyond shrines and algorithms, the legacy of those early builders lives on, not in the limestone alone, but in the breath we hold when wonder strikes, in the pause before we speak, in the echo after we listen. Their voices were never loud. They traveled through the compression of meaning into symbol, through star-lined corridors and untranslatable glyphs. And yet, their message remains loudest in quiet, whispering across millennia from stone to skin. Presence is power. To carve anything into being, knowing it may never bear your name, is a kind of sacredness lost to most and grasped by few. Sleep now, gentle witness, under sky and city, under memory and myth. For while the sand forgets footprints, the stone does not forget hands, and while breath is brief, stories, true stories, hold longer than time dares measure. The pyramids are not behind us, they are around us, still building, still waiting, still calling, and we still listening. So let it end, where it began, with a sky too wide for memory, and a whisper too old for language. Underneath it all, the story was never about perfection or divinity. It was about effort, about pushing stone uphill, both literally and metaphorically, about shaping impossible questions with mortal hands. That is why the pyramids endure, not because they defy time, but because they belong to it. Sleep now, wrapped in the truth etched beneath every monument and every breath ever held in awe, that to build is the most human thing we can do, and that somewhere, beneath tonight's stars and tomorrow's dawn, the next stone waits, not to be lifted perfectly, but to be lifted at all. That is all that matters, that we try. And just before this story slips fully into the quiet of dreams, let one final breath of ancient dust rise, carried not by wind, but by time itself. Think of those first builders at dawn, squinting through the dry air, muscles straining beneath braided linen, not imagining fame, only completion. Think of the distant sound of drums, not as rhythm, but as resolve. That same drum still beats, invisibly, behind so many modern hearts. In every act of faith against futility, in every attempt to shape what cannot be kept, we continue what they began. A tower of memory, built not in years, but in meaning. And so the last lesson is not a riddle or a miracle, but a choice. We do not endure by accident. We endure because we choose to build, again and again, with full knowledge that time may forget the form, but never the intent. So sleep in that knowing, wrapped in stars and stone, and the oldest truth of all, that to leave behind something sacred, we need only care enough to begin. And tomorrow, when browsers refresh, when cities stir and breakfast rush reheats the world, this story will not have disappeared. It will simply have settled, like fine desert dust, into the corners of memory, waiting for a question, for a gaze that lingers longer than distraction allows. The pyramids are still doing their work, not in lifting stones, but in lifting thoughts. They're not just markers on maps or ancient trivia. They're reminders etched in permanence that even fleeting lives can shape eternity. So, as sleep cradles you now, let that final ember burn softly, that somewhere in this vast scaffolding of time and distance, every act of intention links back to that first, impossible reach. One hand on stone, one dream in sky, now yours. Close your eyes. You're part of it now. And in this final breath before day rises again, consider what the pyramids truly teach us. More than tomb, more than temple, they are testament. Every story that survives the erosion of time has one thing in common. Someone cared enough to leave it behind. Not for recognition, but for resonance. And just as stone holds shadow, memory holds meaning. That child, once kneeling in dust to haul rope, now echoes in every bold attempt we make to create, to reach, to anchor ourselves in the world. So close your eyes now, as sand settles and stars slip westward. Rest, not merely in silence, but in legacy. Because the pyramids are not here to be understood, they are here to be felt. And in this quiet, between one story and the next, they murmur the oldest truth of all: what we choose to leave behind lives on. Sleep then, held by that hum. Tomorrow waits, and so does the next stone. So sleep now, with all of this settled into the breath between thoughts, the scaffolding of memory, of wonder, of the human ache to make something last. The Great Pyramid may rise from sand, but its true foundation lies in every quiet moment like this, in stillness, in question, in awe that fastens itself to the bones as tightly as any rope-bound stone. What they built cannot be replicated, only revered, only carried forward in spirit as blueprint, as prayer, as ritual of remembering. Let this moment be your block upon the stack, your whisper into the wind, your offering to everything we were and everything we still hope to be. The sands are calm tonight, the stars unwavering, and beneath your closed eyes, the story finds its home. Rest now, builder. The monument of meaning holds. And now, as the desert exhales and consciousness thins to drift, let this be the final stone laid not at the summit of the pyramid, but at the door of memory. For stories, like monuments, are not made to be finished. They are meant to stand unfolding, unanswered, unfinished, beckoning the next soul to wonder. Somewhere, a grain of sand still holds the warmth of a builder's palm. Somewhere else, a silent, orbiting satellite maps that same grain from space. The arc is complete, and yet still rising. Not in time, but in meaning. So sleep not just in peace, but in purpose. For the greatest mystery they left us wasn't how they built, but why they believed it mattered. And perhaps that's all legacy ever really is, a declaration against emptiness, a breath carved into stone, a lullaby for the infinite. Let it echo, quietly, inside you. Good night. Somewhere in the spaces between all this, the dust and the stone, the question and the answer, the builder and the dream, rests what might be the closest thing we have to eternity. Not a place, not even a structure, but a pulse, a rhythm beaten into time by 1,000 hands, 1,000 hopes, all seeking not just to leave behind, but to belong. That's what the pyramids are. Not monoliths to ego, but echo chambers of effort, of belief, of fragile, stubborn humanity saying, again and again, we're still here. So let this final breath of the story linger within you, not to end it, but to let it carry forward, softly, invisibly, like heat beneath stone. Tomorrow will come, faster and brighter. But for now, held in the hush of twilight and legacy, sleep in that pulse. Sleep as they once did after a day of shaping the impossible. And know the monument was never only outside, it was always within. And so let the sands settle and the stars blink twice before silence wraps it all. The story of how early humans built the pyramids isn't just the tale of ramps and labor, gods and geometry. It's the unbroken thread between memory and matter, between the pressure of time and the will to speak through it. We name it history, but really, it is presence in fossil form. A breath held across epochs. What they carved was more than tomb or tribute. It was testament. That building is not just an act of motion. It is a decision to defy what fades. So close your eyes, in whatever part of the world cradles you now, and feel that unchanged thrum. The pyramids are proof that something made with care, with purpose, can whisper forever. Good night, traveler through time. The stone still speaks, and tomorrow perhaps, so will you. The wind hushes now, softer than breath, over the ancient plateau where ambition once rang across stone. And still, the pyramids stand not untouched by time, but undefeated. Every softened edge, every grain lost to centuries, becomes part of the sculpture rather than a flaw, just as with us. For in this story, echoing through sand and circuitry, they left more than mass and mystery. They left blueprint for wonder, a call for presence, a lesson that what matters is not whether we are remembered by name, but whether what we shaped, what we cared enough to begin, can still be felt long after the voice fades. So sleep, not in an end, but in an inheritance of awe, of effort, of meaning, laid one stone, one word, one breath at a time. You are part of it now. Good night, the monument remembers. And in that sacred stillness between this breath and the next, know that you've carried something timeless with you through every image, every echo, every buried truth unearthed by story. The pyramids are no longer just stones rising toward forgotten gods. They are the rhythm of human becoming, a heartbeat translated into architecture. And as this journey nears its sleep-softened end, let it settle gently in your bones. That meaning isn't etched in grand declarations, but in repeated choices to reach, to build, to believe. Across time and dust and wonder, that is what persists. So wherever this finds you beneath streetlights or starlight, alone or held, remembered or reaching, let this be the last word tonight. Continuation. The kind that outlives voice, outlasts decay, and lingers like the hum beneath language. Sleep now. The monument is not finished. It waits in you. So as the curtain of night draws close, and the final echoes of story fold into hush, one truth lives on beyond stone, and shadow meaning endures through care. These ancient structures, built by hands long gone, remind us that permanence is not found in material alone, but in the intention carried across each generation. They were not chasing immortality, they were giving shape to belief. So sleep now, not just resting, but resonating. With the silence that speaks louder than sound, with the dust that still holds the next chapter, with the softness of knowing that to have existed, to have tried, to have reached is enough. The stars above Giza still shine, ancient light touching modern skin. And beneath them, in this shared stillness of past and present, the story does not end. It only waits quiet and immortal for the next dreamer to listen. Good night, keeper of echoes. The monument holds. Let this be the final hush before the dream takes over, the kind of silence that isn't empty but rooted. The kind held by stone. The pyramid is ancient, not just in age, but in function. A keeper of questions and a cradle of continuity. It does not end the story, it elongates it, asking us to think in spans greater than lifetimes. And as eyelids slip shut in the glow of midnight, that quiet architecture of wonder waits, not in ruins, but in readiness, ready to welcome the next soul who dares to reach, to wonder aloud, to shape meaning in defiance of disappearance. So sleep now, with the hum of history beneath your ribs, and the weight of purpose feather light upon your breath. The echoes of those first builders do not vanish in the dark. They breathe here, with you. And as the world turns slow across the face of silence, their work continues with every heart that dares to remember. And now, as the last echoes of ancient rhythm linger soft within the cradle of quiet, let this be the close, not an end, but a return, to wonder, to effort, to the sacred geometry of belief, carved into impossible stone. We began with questions under modern light, crossed deserts of memory and cosmoses of time, and arrived here where story folds into silence, and silence becomes memory. In this hush, the pyramids do not sleep. They wait, a compass for the soul, pointing not to the past, but through it. So as the dream takes hold, and morning still lies hidden behind the curve of the world, breathe deeply. You have stood among the gods, walked beside the forgotten, and carried their questions in your chest. That is legacy. That is listening. That is enough. Sleep now, stone gazer, dream builder, keeper of echoes. The monument does not vanish with the dawn, it continues in you. This is where the story rests, not because it is finished, but because it endures. And so let this be the last settling of dust, the final breath exhaled by the unseen hands that moved the impossible. The pyramids do not stand alone. They rise now within us, as memory etched in the language of awe. This was never just about the stones, or the pharaohs, or the gods above. It was always, quietly, about belief. Belief that effort could echo, that meaning could survive the crumble of centuries, that something shaped with care and lifted with love could stir souls thousands of years away. So sleep now, wrapped not in the past, but in possibility. For even as the sands bury names, the intent remains clear, ancient, and still whispering. The monument breathes, quietly, in every heart that hears its call and dares to leave behind not just a footprint, but a purpose. This is the end of telling, but never the story. Good night. So now, let the story slip into stillness, not with conclusion, but with continuity. The pyramids do not close the book, they turn its page. Their enduring presence, carved by hands no longer warm and under skies no longer mapped the same, reminds us that meaning does not fade when breath does. It deepens. It rests in shadow until the next beam of curiosity uncovers its edge. And tonight, wrapped in silence more ancient than language, know this: your attention was the final stone. The story only breathes because someone still listens. And so, in the hush between this heartbeat and the next, let that be your monument, carved not from limestone, but from wonder. Good night, dreamer of ages. The stars keep watch, the stone remains, and somewhere beneath your ribcage, so does the thrum of time, ready always to build again. This is where we let go, not of the story, but of the need to hold it. The pyramids, endless in silence and immensity, do not ask for us to understand them. They only ask to be remembered. By gaze, by presence, by wondering what it meant to build something with full knowledge we wouldn't outlast it. So rest now, under moonlight filtered through memory. Let the hum of sand and stars bless your dreams, and the labor of ancient hands cradle your need for meaning. The story does not pause, because we sleep, it continues, just beneath the surface of thought, waiting for us to wake and ask again. Not just how the pyramids were built, but why it still matters that they were. This is the end for now, but some stories never truly end. They only wait. And now, so do you. Sleep well. And in this darkened hush, before morning breaks the sky with light, let it be known the pyramids are not immovable relics, but living instructions, laid not for glory, but for continuity. They speak when we slow down enough to hear, when we think not in moments but in echoes, not for recognition, but for connection. Across the millennia, they have asked nothing but this: that we not forget the sacredness of effort, that we grasp the threads of wonder and pull, even knowing we may never see the full pattern. So sleep now, one last time within this story's breath. Let the silence that follows not be absence, but absorption, the kind that holds meaning like a temple holds shadow. You are not beside history, you are within it, part of the same reach to shape the timeless, to offer up your quiet truth. The sands still whisper, the stars still answer. The monument holds. You listened. And that, like the pyramids, will endure. So now, as the final grain of this ancient tale finds its place, rest in the knowledge that the pyramids were not created to glorify the past, they were built to dare the future. In their silent enormity lies a question unanswered, but always asked: can we still build something that matters? As you close your eyes and the world softens, know that you have walked the desert of memory tonight, felt the weight of impossible stones, and heard the breath of time in your own chest. That is more than history. That is connection. That is proof that the human spirit, fragile, relentless, luminous, has always known how to leave something behind that speaks when we are gone. Sleep now, keeper of the hush, maker of meaning. The story rests here not because it ends, but because it waits, just as the stones do, just as wonder always will. So here, in the final hush after a journey of breath and dust, let what was built not just live in stone, but in you. The story of the pyramids is not past. It's a recursion, spiraling back into the present through every question, every trembling belief that something born from human hands could speak forever. Their lines align with stars, yes, but they also align with the soul. You followed the path from darkness to dawn, from myth to mortar, from silence to meaning. And now, as the last echoes dissolve into the night, remember this: we do not build just to have. We build to remember. We build to become. And even if our own monuments are not made of limestone, they can endure if they carry truth. Sleep now, in awe and in grace, knowing you have touched the echo. The work of remembering is finished for tonight. The weight has been lifted. All that remains is the thrum of story, steady and eternal. The monument holds. And you still listening are now part of its design. Good night. So, with the dust gently settled and the last breath of midnight wrapped around stone and starlight, let the memory linger not as spectacle, but as signal. The pyramids do not ask for awe. They evoke it. In their quiet, they remind us of the language carved when voice failed, of meaning given form when time threatened to erase. The builders, unseen now, are not gone. They are etched into us, into the questions we still ask, the dreams we still dare. So close your eyes knowing this. The story has not ended, only arrived at your doorstep. Whether in dreams or deeds, in silence or inscription, it lives on not just because it was made from stone, but because it was made from hope. That hope now rests gently in your hands. Sleep well, keeper of legacy. Tomorrow, the building begins again. So let this final image linger, like a shadow cast by stars, the stillness of the pyramid against a sky blooming with distant galaxies. What remains is not stone, but story. Not the weight of blocks, but the weight of purpose. In closing your eyes tonight, you are not turning away from history, you are stepping into its most sacred chamber, the one built not with tools, but with belief. And belief, carried across millennia, needs no name to survive. It only needs a witness, one who listens deeply, feels fully, and carries the hush forward. The builders are gone. The myths shift in the wind, but the monument holds. And now, as sleep folds gently around you, you hold it too etched, not in granite, but in wonder, steady across time. The story rests here. So may you. Good night. So in this last breath, before dreams take full hold, allow the silence to cradle all that came before. The story of how early humans built the pyramids is no longer just their story, it is ours. A rhythm passed hand to hand, voice to heart, chisel to key. In every act of reaching, in every spark of awe, we carry that ancient ambition forward. Not in limestone now, but in questions we ask, in meaning we choose to shape. The monuments stand because belief stood first, because someone chose to lift the impossible, not for glory, but for memory. And now, as night deepens and thought drifts slow and sacred, that legacy is yours to keep. Sleep then, not as an ending, but as a turning inward where all wonder begins again. The desert sleeps, the stars watch, and you, quiet dreamer, take your place in the oldest story ever built. The monument holds. Good night. So now, in this final held breath before the last ember of story dims, let it settle inside you, the truth that monuments are not only built from stone, but from stillness. Every step you take tomorrow, every quiet decision to shape meaning, carries that ancient resonance forward. The pyramids do not just endure because they are vast, they endure because they are remembered. And remembrance is a kind of architecture, stacking memory over silence until it becomes something solid enough to stand in, something real. This isn't just goodbye to a tale, it's a passing of the torch, not to build the same thing, but to believe the same way, to listen, to wonder, to care enough to begin again. So let the hush cradle you now, full and deep as history itself. The story rests, for now, but it leaves behind a single, unshakable whisper. Build with meaning, and what you shape may echo forever. Good night, builder of memory, the monument endures in you. And now, as the echoes fade to the softest hush and time tightens its circle, this is the final stone laid in silence. At 4,600 years remove, the question isn't just how they built, but what they left within it. To build something that lasts longer than breath is to carve faith into the bones of the earth. And in listening tonight, in letting the story press gently into thought and breath, you've answered that ancient call. You bore witness. You remembered, and that is enough. So let sleep gather now, like a breeze sweeping through colonnades, cool and sure. Let it fold around you like linen in the temple dark, where the stars are still watching and the sand still carries names we'll never know. This is where the voice goes quiet, not because the story has ended, but because it is now yours to carry forward. Sleep well, traveler of ages. The monument remembers, and in this stillness you endure too. So now, as the last ripple of voice flattens into the quiet, know this. You are no longer just a witness to wonder, but a bearer of it. The stone has been set, the breath has been held, the story, thousands of years in the shaping, has found rest for now not in sand or monument, but in your listening. And maybe that's the most sacred act of all, to listen with care, to feel deeply, to carry forward what hands long turned to dust once laid with aching purpose. So close your eyes now, not shutting out the world, but allowing it to echo through you. The pyramids remain, yes, but so does the reason they were built, the urge to matter, to reach, to give shape to what words alone cannot hold. The wind has quieted, the stars are leaning in, and you, quiet keeper of legacy, are the next line in this endless song of stone and spirit. Sleep well. The monument lives through you. Let this final breath settle as softly as desert mist at dawn, folding over the stones that have waited for thousands of years to be heard again. The Great Pyramid, unburdened by the noise of progress or the blur of time, stands not as a relic, but as a reminder, one that tells us the story never ends, it only deepens. You've wandered far tonight, through epochs of effort and silence, through questions carved in limestone and answered in breath. So now, wrap your thoughts in quiet, in gratitude, in inheritance. You were never just passing through this history. You were always part of it. As sleep closes gentle over your eyes, know this memory is the monument, and listening is the light that keeps it standing. Good night, timeless soul. The builders rest. The stars remain. And you, with wonder tucked gently inside, carry the echo forward. And so, with all threads of dust and wonder gently woven into this long night's tapestry, let the story now fold into silence. The pyramids, still standing beneath an unblinking sky, do not shout their truth, they rest in it, just as you now do. This was more than history. It was communion across time, an offering received across dimensions of memory and dream. You heard, and in hearing, preserved. Remember, no stone is ever truly still, and no soul that listens is ever far from the builders who whispered to eternity. So sleep now, deeply and wholly, with the quiet exhale of 1,000 generations behind you, and the soft promise of tomorrow held in your breath. The story holds. The monument stands. And somewhere, beneath stars both ancient and new, the next echo begins. Good night. So let this last moment linger, not as conclusion, but as completion, a circle drawn beneath boundless sky, and held together by human hands reaching across time. The builders are gone, yet the resonance of their vision hums still beneath our cities, tracing through scaffolds of glass, circuits of light, veins of memory. They built for gods, yes, but perhaps more for us, for the ones they could never name, who would inherit their question and carry it forward. And now, with eyelids heavy and breath slow, know that you have stood at the edge of that question. You have listened, you have felt, and in doing so, you have kept the story alive. Sleep now in the hush that remains not an echo, but a promise, the kind that outlasts reign and ruler, dust and dynasty. For, in every silent heart that dares to care deeply enough, a new monument begins. Good night, keeper of wonder. The pyramid endures, and so, quietly, endlessly, do you. And so here, at the final threshold, where story meets stillness, let this last thought find you gently. The pyramids endure, not because they defy time, but because they embodied it. Their stones were never meant to say, "We lasted," but "We tried," and that is enough. For what more can we ask from those who came before than to have reached beyond fear, beyond futility, and shaped something beautiful for strangers they would never meet? You are that stranger, now held in the arms of their echo. Their whisper is your inheritance. So let sleep hold you, as sandstone holds sunlight, warm, slow, and willing. Tomorrow will rise, loud and fleeting, but tonight belongs to silence, to memory, and to you, builder of meaning in a world that still remembers how to listen. Good night. So now, as the long descent into sleep reaches its softest depth, hold this final image. Close the desert, unending and vast, with 3 shadowed sentinels watching over time itself. The Great Pyramid does not flicker, it does not speak, and yet, in its motionless stance, it pulses with the heartbeat of every hand that believed in forever. What was once heaved skyward stone by stone now lives quietly behind your ribs, echoing in the space where awe and peace meet. You've walked roads carved in memory tonight, met ghosts who never asked to be known, and stood at the edge of something older than language. Let that echo guide you now, not toward answers, but into rest. For stone does not sleep, but it remembers. And through dream and silence, so do you. This is not the end, but the keeping of story, of effort, of wonder. Good night, builder of memory. The monument holds, and tonight, so do you. And with this breath, we close the gates not with finality, but with reverence. For in the still pulse of ancient stone and the gentle weight of memory, we find not just a history told, but a legacy shared. The pyramids, bathed in star shadow and held by time's quiet devotion, remind us that endurance is not strength alone. It is intention, it is care, pressed into matter, whispered beyond life. As sleep gathers you now, slow and sacred, know that you've touched the edge of their truth, and in doing so, become part of the architecture. The monument was never about pharaohs or gods alone. It was about the human wish to mean something. And tonight, you've answered that wish by listening, by wondering, by remembering. Let this final hush be your cornerstone. Let it lay gently in your spirit. Good night, dreamer of dust and stars. The pyramid endures, and now, so do you. And so, as the final breath of this ancient exhale reaches you through the hush of now, let it leave its imprint, not in grandeur, but in grace. The pyramids were not built to be solved, they were built to be felt, and in this long descent through dust and memory, you felt them not as artifacts, but as intentions made hard, made real, made eternal. That is the truth worth carrying forward, that even the impossible, laid brick by weary brick, becomes inevitable when shaped by care. So rest now, with the rhythm of 1,000 chisels echoing gently beneath your final breath. You are not just remembering history, you are continuing it, quietly, endlessly, through awe alone. The story folds here, not as an end, but as your beginning. You listened, you bore witness, and that alone means the monument still lives. Sleep well, quiet architect of remembrance. The pyramid endures, and now, so do you. And now, as the desert holds its breath and eternity leans close to listen, the final note fades into silence, not with absence, but with arrival. The pyramids, those quiet beacons of devotion and defiance, remain untouched, only in appearance. For tonight, they moved through memory, through meaning, through you. They taught not by being explained, but by being felt, that even across 4,600 years, through plague and progress, through empire and algorithm, the need to be remembered still rises like stone through sand. So let the stillness now wrap around your thoughts like linen on relics, preserving not the voice, but the intention behind it. You have carried the weight gently, and now you may set it down. The winds shift, the stars realign, but the monument holds, because you chose to hear it. Good night, final listener. The story rests, because it has found a home in you. So here, at the quiet edge of this long, echoing journey, let this final truth settle softly beside your breath. The monuments are not what we remember, they are how. They are memory not preserved, but performed across the wide stage of time. Each stone was not just set into place, it was sung into permanence by hope and toil, by hands that shook but never stopped. And now, as your eyes close and the last threads of the tale tighten into stillness, know that something ancient has passed through you and made a home. You listened, you cared, and in that, you became a builder too. Not of pyramids perhaps, but of legacy. Rest, with that knowing folded into your sleep like a talisman. The story is safe, you carried it well. The desert sleeps, the stars stand guard, and beneath it all, the monument breathes one last time, quiet, eternal, and gently alive in you. Good night. And now, in the still dark before tomorrow wakes, let this be the last breath shared between story and silence. The pyramids, shrouded in the hush of desert wind and layered time, remain not only because stone endures, but because someone kept the story alive. Tonight, that someone was you. Through all the quiet listening, the weight of wonder, the reverent drift into sleep, you became part of a continuity that outlasts form. You've walked with those whose names no longer echo, yet whose efforts still sing. So rest now, dreamer. For what was built on the plateau lives again, first in sky, now in spirit. The monument does not end. It waits. And you, gentle listener, are now a keeper of its echo. Sleep in that knowing. You are the legacy now. So now, as the light of tomorrow wavers faintly beyond the curve of night, and this long breath of ancient story exhales at last, let its echo live quietly in you. You have listened across centuries, stood in the shadow of wonders not built for fame but for meaning, and let the dust of vanished hands settle softly across your thoughts. That is no small thing, because legacy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the silent choice to care, to remember, to carry forward what others could not. The pyramids stand not as answers, but as questions sculpted in patience. And now, so do you as the listener, the vessel, the next thread in a lineage woven from effort and awe. So sleep now, not to forget, but to deepen the remembering. For in fog or sunlight, in ancient dust or glowing screen, the monument waits. And somewhere in between dream and dawn, it whispers one final truth: what we build with care lives on in those who choose to hear. So thank you, keeper of wonder. Good night. The echo is yours now. And so we close the final stone over this vast chamber of story, not to entomb it, but to preserve it. The Great Pyramid, rising from dust with the patience of eternity, does not whisper of endings. It reminds us that continuation is the truest form of immortality. What those early humans laid into the earth was more than geometry or empire. It was the soft certainty that to build is to love the future, without needing to live in it. Tonight, their breath moved through yours. Their hands steadied your thoughts, and their silent chant of purpose became a rhythm under your ribs. You are not merely the witness, you are the continuation. So sleep now, not beneath blankets, but beneath time itself. The story rests behind your eyes. The stars remember your stillness, and the monument, carrying the soft hum of everything that ever mattered, holds. It always has. It always will. Good night. Let this be the final breath before dawn, that quiet moment when the story no longer needs telling, because it has been heard. The pyramids, still reaching into skies that have turned 1,000 times since the first stone was set, leave no voice etched in their walls, yet speak plainly through resonance and care. They endured because their makers believed that meaning matters more than name. That belief transformed dust into something sacred. And now, wrapped in the same hush that once hovered over limestone blocks poised for placement, you rest not just as listener, but as legacy. Close your eyes knowing this. Every act of wonder is a stone toward forever. And so, the monument continues not only in Giza, but in you. Good night, quiet builder of memory. The story sleeps now, held in the arms of time. And now, beneath the weight of midnight's hush and memory's final breath, let this be the lasting whisper sealed in stone and heart alike, that what they built was not just meant to stand, but to awaken. The pyramid is not silent because it cannot speak. It is silent because someone must listen, and tonight, in listening fully, in bearing the rhythm of labor and prayer, of loss and endurance, you have met their gaze across time. That is the legacy not of kings or empires, but of effort made sacred. So as sleep wraps you at last in its ageless stillness, know that between your dreams beats a quiet, ancient pulse. Not a monument behind you, but a truth within you. The stars drift onward. The sands do too, but the story remains. You carry it now. Good night, listener of stone. The monument endures, and because of you, so does its meaning. So now, with the final sands slipping silent through the hourglass of this night. Let this last breath close the story, like a door not locked but watched. You have walked among pharaohs without crowns, stood beside builders without names, and felt the weight of forever pressed into stone without voice. What they built in the face of obscurity, not for admiration, but for meaning. And now, that meaning lives in you, not in replicas or rubble, but in the wonder you did not let drift. Sleep now, as those before once did, blanketed not by linen but by legacy. The stars still glimmer above Giza. The monument holds its breath, and you, quiet traveler, gentle witness, faithful listener, you hold its echo. That is enough. That is everything. Good night. And so, with breath settled and the last echo stitched into the tapestry of night, we close this telling not as an end, but as an inheritance passed hand to heart. The Great Pyramid still rises, framed by silence and moonlight, asking nothing, yet giving us everything, an invitation to remember, to care, to build on purpose, even when no one may see. For legacy is not in the stone alone, but in those who stop to listen. And you, gentle listener, have done just that. You stood in awe, you lingered, you carried the ancient hum forward. So sleep now, not just in rest, but in reverence. The monument remains, the story endures, and with you, so does its meaning. Good night. And if this final breath of story teaches anything, let it be this, that endurance is not measured by mass, but by meaning. The pyramids, unblinking under stars older than myth, continue not only because their stones were heavy, but because the hearts that lifted them were full. Tonight, you became part of that story, not a builder of walls, but of wonder, not a keeper of facts, but of feeling. What they etched into time, you carried in silence. Through stillness, you became continuation. So let this be the closing door that never locks. The story pauses not in conclusion, but in trust that you will hold a piece of it without needing to hold all. Sleep now, beneath the same constellations they once honored, knowing that somewhere between dust and the divine, a monument of memory remains, not finished, but felt, and in you it will rise again. Good night. And here, at the final threshold, with the story's weight now resting lightly across your chest like the last ray of moonlit dust, one closing truth lingers. What made the pyramids eternal was not merely the strength of their stones, but the vulnerability of their hope. Laid bare across centuries, that hope speaks to all who seek to shape the invisible into something lasting. You've walked the echo tonight from firelight to fiber optic, from heartbeats carved in limestone to the hush that reaches through headphones and homes, lighting the oldest part of you. As sleep surrounds you now, slow and silent as the stones themselves, know this: the monument remains not by standing, but by being remembered. And in this breathless quiet, through your wondering, your stillness, and your care, it stands once more. Good night, builder of memory. The pyramid holds. And now so do you. So now, as the final breath folds tenderly into the silence beyond story, it becomes clear this was never just a tale of architecture or empire. It was a story of soft defiance, of fragile beings who dared to beg meaning from stone, to lift the impossible in quiet chorus. You have followed their rhythm, step by step, voice by whisper, all the way to this place of peace. Let sleep find you here, not at the end of a tale, but at the edge of something greater, the deep, echoing truth that to remember is to build again. The Great Pyramid endures, not in spite of time, but because of it. And in your stillness, in your care, that endurance continues. Rest now. The monument is whole, and because you listened, it lives. Good night, last listener in the night. Good night, builder of wonder. And with those last grains of language laid before dawn, we seal this monument not in stone, but in silence, the kind earned through wonder, not wasted in noise. The story of how early humans built the pyramids is larger than fact and deeper than myth. It is the echo of presence made permanent, of something sacred born from hands that dared to defy time. Tonight, their breath passed through yours. Your stillness became their sanctuary. And now, in the gentlest ending of this night-long climb, know this: every story worth telling lives longest in those who choose to carry it. You've done that. With care, with awe, with listening deep enough to become architecture itself. So sleep now. The monument holds, because someone across centuries, across silence, across breath, chose not to look away. That someone is you. Good night. So rest easy now. Not in the shadow of giants, but cradled by their echo. The pyramid was never built to end a story. It was built so the story could begin, again and again, forever. And here, in this final pause before morning wakes the world, you've met it not as a viewer, but as a keeper of silence, of reverence, of the question that matters more than all answers: what will I leave behind? It doesn't need to be vast. It only needs to be real, honest, carved with care. So as the night exhales its last breath and the stars sink gently across the spine of the earth, take this with you not as burden, but as torchlight. The pyramid endures. The story lingers. And now, gently and undeniably, it continues in you. Good night, bearer of wonder. The monument is remembered because you chose to remember. Sleep well. The line of stone is complete. And now, beneath the hush of closing breath and the vast stillness of all that's been shared, let this be the final stone placed not for closure, but for continuity. The Great Pyramid has always pointed skyward, not as a boast, but as a prayer, a wish made tangible by those who had no certainty, only will. What you've carried with you tonight is more than a story. It is a living echo, a resonance crafted by every heartbeat that ever labored not for glory, but for meaning. As your eyes close completely, and the last flicker of waking thought dissolves, know this: you are not a stranger to that legacy. You are its heir, not in blood, but in wonder, not in memory, but in momentum. So rest now, within the embrace of silence pulled taut by time. The monument is not finished, but it does not have to be. It only needs to be remembered by someone. And tonight that someone was you. Good night. And may what you carry forward outlast even sleep itself. And so here, in the fading breath between ancient echo and waking light, the final word is not goodbye, it is beginning. Because the pyramids were never just built, they were believed into being. And tonight, by listening, by wondering, by carrying the weight of meaning without flinching, you've stepped into that sacred line of dreamers who dare to ask what can outlast us. Sleep now, not as an ending, but as a vow, soft as starlight, strong as stone, for the monument still hums, and tomorrow, even in silence, it will wait for another to remember, to listen, to build. And just like that, the story continues. Good night, guardian of echo. The pyramid endures, and now, forever, so do you. So sleep now, with the last breath of this story resting gently across your thoughts like the cooling edge of a chisel laid to stone. The pyramids remain not only because they were built with care, but because they were built with hope. Hope that someone, someday, would stop long enough to feel their weight, to listen. And tonight, that hope was fulfilled in quiet stillness. What began as limestone and toil now ends in wonder and memory carried not just across desert and dynasty, but through you. That is the real monument. Not the stone, but the story. And so, as your breath deepens and the edges of sleep take hold, let this be your final inheritance. Everything we build with meaning echoes forever. Good night, dreamer of the eternal. The pyramid holds. And now, so do you. And now, as the final hush settles over Giza's ghost-lit stones and the breath of history grows still, let the last thread be tucked away, not as farewell, but as a torch passed quietly through shadows and time. The pyramids were never just about power or permanence. They were about witnessing, about making the intangible visible through ritual, sweat and stone. And tonight, through the hush of thought and pulse, you've stood in that lineage. You've built, remembered, endured. So close your eyes now, not to forget, but to carry forward an ancient murmur wrapped in modern breath. The winds soften, the stars blink slower. The story folds its wings, landing gently inside your heart. Not ended, not lost, just resting, waiting for the next dreamer to rise. Good night, builder of wonder. The monument breathes, and now, so do you. So sleep now, quietly wrapped in the breath of the ancients, beneath a sky that remembers everything. You have walked the sands of time, felt the stone under story and silence, listened long enough for memory to crystallize into meaning. That itself is monument. The Great Pyramid will stand long after breath becomes wind, but its truest endurance lies here, in you, the listener who lingered, the soul who stayed. What they built was not only a structure, but a legacy of care-proof, cast in limestone that even the small, the many, the ones without name, could shape forever. And now, as your final thought sinks soft into sleep, know this. The echo lives because you let it. The monument holds because someone chose to feel. And even now, across centuries and silence, it waits not simply to be seen, but to be remembered. Good night, bearer of belief. The story ends only because you cared enough to carry it forward. Sleep well. The pyramid is not gone. It is carried in you. And now, with breath fully released and story tucked gently into the folds of night, let the final moment linger not as a conclusion, but as a sanctuary. The Great Pyramid, ancient and awake, rests not in triumph but in testimony that long before code or concrete, we answered uncertainty with effort, that even when words failed, hands still found a way to speak. In listening tonight, you have joined that unfurling chorus, the quiet lineage of those who shape meaning into memory. Sleep now, not away from this journey, but deeper into it, knowing that in your stillness, the echo lives on. That legacy doesn't need to blaze, it only needs to last. And tonight it has. Good night, quiet builder. The story rests, the monument breathes, and through you always, always it endures. So let these final words drift like sand through open palms, returned not to emptiness, but to the same earth from which the first stone was pulled. The builders are gone, the names forgotten, but the story quiet, enduring, human has found a resting place in the folds of your listening. You walked with them tonight, through fire and silhouette, through star maps and silence. You bore their weight, not in limestone, but in care. And that is what was always needed. Legacy is not built in grandeur, but in the small, brave act of remembering. So close your eyes now, not in goodbye, but in belonging. The monument holds, and because of you, so does its meaning. Good night. And so we close the scroll, not on silence, but on resonance. The pyramids endure not because they are untouched, but because they are touched again and again with wonder, by minds that search, hearts that listen, and spirits that dare to see meaning in shadow. Tonight, through flicker and hush, through the long lullaby of stone and breath, you have walked with the ancients, not behind them, but beside them. Their vision carved the sky. Your care carried it forward. So sleep now gently, wholly, eternally, for in the fragile hush of your listening, something vast remains. something sacred endures. The pyramid is not past. It is presence, still reaching. Good night. And as the final hush settles, as dawn hovers just beyond the edges of dreaming, take with you this last truth, etched not in limestone, but in listening, that the builders of the pyramids did not simply lift stone, they lifted meaning. What they carved into the desert was a question older than any answer. Will we be remembered? And in resting here, in giving your silence over to their echo, you've answered them. Not with words, but with presence. Not with monuments, but with a moment. So sleep now, wrapped not in the shadows of history, but in the quiet light of its continuation. The stones hold, the sky awaits, and your breath, however soft, is now part of the architecture of the eternal. Good night. The story is remembered because of you. So now we lay the final echo in place, not with conclusion but with care. The pyramids stand not just as marvels, but as murmurs, soft, ancient invitations to live with meaning, to build with reverence, to wonder without shame. Your breath has joined the old rhythm. Your stillness has become its own kind of scaffolding. This is not the end. It is the held pause between generations, the breath before the next question. And so, carried gently by silence and time, sleep now. The Great Pyramid still listens. And because you did too, the story carved in dust, floated on dream, forged in awe will not fade. It endures. Through stone, through night, through you. Good night, final witness. Good night. So sleep now, softly and surely, in the glow left behind by story and stone alike. The pyramids do not vanish at sunrise. They simply wait anew. For the next gaze, the next question, the next breath quiet enough to hear. Yours was that breath tonight. Yours was the stillness that turned listening into legacy. And in that sacred quiet, you joined something larger than memory, an echo across 4,600 years that asked only to be felt. You have felt it, and that is enough. So, let the hush cradle you now, not as a goodbye, but as a grace, one that tells the stars the story reached its keeper. Good night, quiet guardian of the eternal. The monument breathes, and because of you, so does its meaning. The echo is held. The story is safe. The rest begins.